I often get asked if I own any zebras in South Africa. The answer is yes. We used to own 3 on our farm, 2 males and 1 female. It's a bad combination since both males fought over the female. Eventually, the younger male was kicked out of the herd and he decided that he would actually chill with the wild horse herd we had. He then died of a suspected horse kick. The only surviving male has now become a very aggressive stallion. We never rode our zebras, specifically because they are wild animals. They're not domesticated horses, so they can be very unpredictable. But there are those in Africa and the US who have managed to train zebras, even Zorses or zebroids. A Zorse or a zebroid is a cross between a zebra and either a horse or a mule or a donkey. They are rare since they're sterile, so you can't breed with them. If you do want to own a Zorse or a zebra, I suggest you do your homework thoroughly. The best handler for a zebra would be a very experienced horse trainer, someone who has some mule training as experience as plus. Sadly, a lot of zebras get passed around due to people jumping into purchasing them and then not being able to handle them. Zebras are not horses, so they're less trusting than a horse, and their flight instincts are high. Training a zebra takes a lot of patience and handling. Simple tasks like haltering and leading can take a lot of time to perfect. They need consistent handling. A zebra that has just turned out to pasture and not handled will eventually become wild again. Zebra stallions, once they start breeding, can also get really aggressive to both humans and other animals. Most breeders choose to bottle raise their foals since they can't even handle their own stock. They'll pull the foals at 2 weeks old while they're easy to handle, and then they'll put them to bottle. Most breeders then ship them off immediately to auction because, hey, anyone's gonna buy a cute fuzzy foal in a bottle, right? This can be super risky for the foal, being pulled away from its mother so young and then shipped around for auction. There is a high risk of sickness, which eventually can lead to death. Bottle babies are more prone to have attitude and temperament issues due to not having that motherly figure. They also tend to be really sweet and bound to you strongly, as if you're their mother and you have the milk they want. So people tend to spoil them quite a bit. But since they never had that discipline, once they're older, they become very disrespectful. In most cases, this makes them a lot harder to train, as they don't like being told what to do. This is the same with other equines too. Zebras are extremely strong, smart, and sensitive, which this combination has given them an untrainable name. Zebras are trainable, but not many people understand them and try to use harsh training techniques, which doesn't work. Zebras need to be trained with gentle training techniques. They can't be forced to do anything they don't want to do. They tend to panic when they're under stress, which they can seriously hurt themselves or their handlers. They will shut down, just like a donkey or a mule will, which gives them that stubborn name. Also, they can become very aggressive to protect themselves against force. If a good bond is created, a zebra can be trained to do a lot of things a horse can. It really takes a zebra with exceptional temperament and the right training to get to that point, though. If it was easy, you would see more of us in Africa riding them around instead of our horses. I won't get into too much detail about whether it is safe to ride a zebra or donkey regarding their backs. I'm not a qualified vet, but I don't think it is fair to ride a zebra, as there are wild animals that deserve freedom, not domestication. But that's my opinion. Others may disagree, but I am 100% firm within my opinion. In the 1760s, French naturalist Comte du Buffon believed that zebras could replace horses. Eccentric aristocrats around the world had zebra carts at various times in the 19th century. Reasons for zebra taming interest in the 1800s and the early 1900s. Britain was a colonial power, and the colonists tried to turn the local fauna for their own particular use, oftentimes because their imported European livestock couldn't thrive in the new African conditions. The acclimation societies wanted to add new animals to the list of animals that would be useful to man. The prevailing view was that the Christian God had made the animals for humans to use. Circuses and showmen wanted to present something exotic to the paying public. Accomplished horsemen, eager to demonstrate their prowess in the saddle, wanted the challenge of taming and training the seemingly interactable zebra. Aristocrats and rich eccentrics sought novelty. Then motor cars arrived, and the bored and wealthy could now show off their wealth by owning motor cars instead of breaking exotic equids to harness. The German army was particularly interested in taming zebras for riding, pack animals, and cart animals. They also had a program for crossing Chapman zebras with horses to create a hybrid that was resistant to the diseases that killed horses. Zebras were often used for entertainment, such as jumping. The use of the backward seat at that time made this unpleasant for the zebra, and for horses, of course, in the show jumping ring. Alice Hayes. In 1877, Captain Matthew Horace Hayes wrote the Veterinarian Notes for Horse Owners, which became the standard work on equine health care, which is now revised and still remains in print today. Captain Hayes was an army vet, and he and his wife, Alice Hayes, traveled widely in the course of his work. Alice was an accomplished rider, and she was the author of The Horsewoman, A Practical Guide to Side Saddle Riding, which was printed in 1893 and revised in 1903, and further edited by her husband. She rode a variety of difficult horses, including zebras, which her husband broke for her to ride. Riding difficult horses. The most awkward kicker I ever rode was a mountain zebra, which my husband broke in at Calcutta. He kicked very neatly, without lowering his head, and as the slightest touch on his ears drove him nearly out of his mind. I had great difficulty in avoiding them, as he kicked with a sort of peculiar wriggle which complicated the performance for me, because I had no practice on a kicking zebra, and had to pick up my knowledge as I went on. It was no use trying to rein him back, for he had a neck like a bull, with a small rudimentary dewlap, and at every kick he gave, he made a noise like a pig grunting. His skin was the best part about him, and was as lovely and soft to the touch as the finest sealskin. As I believe I'm the only woman who has ridden a mountain zebra, this photograph is probably unique. It ought to be a better one, seeing the trouble I took to make my obstinate mount stand still, but it seemed to regard the camera as an infernal machine destined for his destruction, and flatly refused to pose nicely for his portrait. He was far too neck-strong to make a pleasant mount for a lady. Kickers, as I have already said, should never be taken into any hunting field. Horace wrote, Mules and Zebras. These animals are so stiff in the neck that there is great difficulty in giving them a good mouth. Mules, as a rule, are timid animals which take time to make up their minds to do anything unusual, and are consequently apt to be misunderstood by men who treat them as if they were high-couraged and impulsive horses. Mules, I have found, possess more affection than horses for those who are kind and sympathetic to them. Many of them are fine natural jumpers and show particular care to avoid chancing their fences. In the late 19th century, it was fashionable to train zebras to pull carriages. Lord Walter Rothschild had a penchant for harnessing zebras. Zebra hybrid carts. A number of colonial powers experimented with zebra horse hybrids in Africa. It was hoped that the hybrids would be better suited to the African climate and better suited to saddle or harness. Others, such as zebra ass hybrids, were bred by circuses or purely to give a stylish carriage mule. Zebra carts in Africa. Imported horses fared badly in Africa due to the climate and endemic diseases. The obvious solution to colonists was to domesticate the native African equids. Horses had co-evolved with Europeans for thousands of years and had become domesticated, but zebras never underwent the same process, and they regarded humans as predators. They were also anatomically different from European horses, having stiff necks and very low withers. Nevertheless, man successfully broke zebras to saddle or harness. Once they were broken, they were then tracked to harness. but their wild instincts made them easily spooked, and they could be ferocious kickers and biters. Hybrids were also bred, particularly in German East Africa, where they were used for hauling gun carriages. The zebra has not been domesticated in its native land, but the continuing interest in zebras for saddle and carriage means that they are being selectively bred in the US. Hans and Tanta of Beverly Dairy Company. Hans and Tanta were captured in southwest Africa, near the city of Windhoek, Namibia. They were trained at Hagenbach Circus at Altona Stellingen in Germany. In July 1929, at the age of 3 years old, they went to the Beverly Dairy Company in St. Louis, USA. Due to their early capture and training, Hans and Tanta were exceedingly gentle and well-trained. In the 1930s, they became a familiar sight, pulling the Beverly Dairy Co. milk delivery wagon through the streets of St. Louis. If you want to learn more about the history of zebras and hybrid zebras, then check out the description at the bottom of this video for links to websites and museums. All pictures taken belong to their respective copyrights. Thanks for taking the time to learn about the fascinating history of my native wildlife.